Here's the advice I give you, is that failure and success belong together. I've written 2 books about failure, Failing Forward, and then Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. And I have come to the conclusion that we make a real error of separating success and failure and saying, okay, success is here and failure is here, and you never let them get together and always be successful and don't fail. Every success story has failure in it, but not every failure story has success in it. And what's the difference? The difference is our perspective of failure. You see, how we view things determines how we do things. So, if we view failure as a part of success, we'll learn from it and we'll embrace it, and it will be our best friend if we view failure as part of success. But if we view failure separated from success, going back to it's not part of success, it's part of the problem, then we don't learn from it, because all we want to do is avoid it. So when I put success and failure together, it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is part of success. This is failure 101, part of my success growth program that I have in my life. So when we keep failure and success together, it does a few things for us. It helps us It helps us value failure. Wow, this is so true. When I keep them together, every time I fail, I say, well, there was a lesson to be learned there. And when I have failure, it also, instead of discourages me to get out of the game because I put it with success, it encourages me to keep in the game. And it also, I think, when we put success and failure together, there's a sense of that it gives us humility and maturity. It's almost like humility and maturity are a result of the fact that, yes, I do well sometimes, and sometimes I have some major misses in my life. I had a very interesting conversation a couple of years. We were having a very interesting call and the executive that was talking in this situation was talking about failures and mistakes, and the process of getting to the top isn't an easy process, that there are setbacks. So when it was all over, I asked him a question. I said, well, let's talk about these do-overs. A do-over is when you'd get a chance. This doesn't really happen, but would you like to have a chance to go back and change a decision, do over an action and change that? So I asked him, I said, let's talk about your do-overs. What of all the mistakes and failures you've had in your life, which one of them was the one you'd say, boy, I'd like to go back and do that over? And his answer was incredible. It was shocking and it was refreshing. So when I asked him, I said, okay, what's the do-over you would like to have in your life? He said, I've made a lot of mistakes and I've had a lot of messes and failures. But he said, I don't think I want to go do any of them over. And it just got real quiet on the phone. And I said, what do you mean you don't want to do any of them over? He said, well, he said, humanly, there's a lot of things I'd like to maybe go back on the board and erase. But he said, you have to understand, when I messed up, the lessons I learned from that far exceeded the terribleness of the mess up. And he said, it really formed my character. It's who I am. He said, it's out of my misses and my failures and my errors and mistakes. He said, it's out of all this that I formed my character. It's out of this that I've formed my values of who I am. And he said, I'm afraid if I would go over and do any of my mistakes and failures over again, I'm afraid that would leave a missing piece in my character development. And my character development is more important than my past failures. When he finished talking about that, I just thought to myself, wow, here's a man who has a great maturity and a great understanding about failure and success should never be separated. They belong together. One adds to the other. And both of them are really what makes us who we should be. So it's kind of like, in this part of advice, I guess the advice I'm giving you is when you lose, don't lose the lesson. And so many times when people lose, they lose the lesson. And the reason they lose the lesson is they separate success and failure. And because of that, they have to live in the failure line, and they say, "Well, I've got to get away from this as much as possible." If they kept them together, they would just say, "Well, some days I win, and some days I learn." Tremendous advice. Let me give you another piece of advice that I think would be helpful to you, and that one is that decision making is overrated, and decision managing is underrated. And the reason I say that is because, honestly, everybody I know has made bad decisions. I mean, let me just check with the coaches. How many of you made bad? The difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is not that successful people make good decisions and unsuccessful people make bad decisions. The difference is that successful people, their response to their bad decisions are different than unsuccessful people. You see, successful people, when they make a bad decision, they don't deny responsibility for it. They don't run from the scene of the accident. They basically say, "Okay, I messed up here. Now what do I learn?" Versus the person who hates failure, they basically, their whole thing is, I've got to leave as quickly as I can. I've got to leave the scene of the accident. It's been my conclusion in this area of decision that, again, decision making is overrated. But here's the big miss, I think, and that is decision managing is underrated. I mean, okay, if I make a decision to marry my spouse, that's a decision, but managing that decision is going to determine the success of that marriage. And that's true in every relationship. That's true in the decisions we make in the business world. It's not that I haven't made some bad decisions, but I've been able to very quickly learn from those bad decisions, change those decisions. I think when I wrote my book, Make Today Count, I basically, the thesis of that book is that good people, successful people, they make good decisions. But what makes the good decisions great decisions is that they manage those good decisions well. So a good decision becomes a great decision when you manage it, just like a good decision becomes a bad decision if you don't manage it. And so in the book on Make Today Count, I wrote Just for Today, and I began to talk about what I call the daily disciplines of decision-making and management. And just for today, I will choose and display the right attitudes. And just for today, I will determine and act upon important priorities. And just for today, I will know and follow healthy guidelines. And just for today, I will communicate with and care for my family. And just for today, I will practice and develop good thinking. And just for today, I will make and keep proper commitments. And just for today, I will earn and properly manage finances. And just for today, I will deepen and live out my faith. And just for today, I will initiate and invest in solid relationships. And just for today, I will plan for and model generosity. And just for today, I will seek and experience improvements in my life. And then I put at the end, I will act on these decisions and I'll practice these disciplines. And then one day, you see, if I manage those decisions well, here's the compounding that I want to talk to you about. One day I will see the compounding results of each day lived well. And that's the key right there. You see, if I manage those decisions daily, one day, all of that management compounds and it begins to show up. So that's just good advice for you. It's just good advice for me that, decision making is overrated, decision managing. Let's focus on decision managing more than just the decision making aspect. And of course, the first advice on keep failure and success together. Let me squeeze in one more quickly, and that is the third thing I'd like to share with you in the area of advice is consistency compounds. It just does. And every one of us has seen the doubling of a penny, that if you got a penny on the first day of a month, and there were 31 days in that month, and you just, the next day, you doubled it, and the next day, you doubled it again. After the first week, you'd only have 64 cents. Well, that's not too promising. And after the second week, you'd only have $81.92. Okay, that's not too promising either. After the third week, well, it's starting to show up a little bit. You'd have $10,485.76. But after the fourth week, wow, after 28 days, $1.3 million. You say, well, that's pretty amazing. Well, you want to go 3 more days to that 31st day. Now it's $10.8 million. Consistency compounds, but it doesn't show up until the end. And here's the challenge. Because it doesn't show up in the front end, we stop being consistent. We just kind of don't sense the value of staying in the game like we need to. Let me give you what I call the persistent, consistent principle. You see, if you and I are persistent, if you're persistent, here's what you're going to get. You're going to get momentum, because momentum is the result of many pushes, not just one. So when you have momentum, it's not because you did one push and off you go. It's a lot of pushes. And excellence is the result of many practices, not just one. Okay, so persistence, if you're persistent, you will get it. And if you're consistent, you will grow it. If you're consistent, you're not only going to get it, but you're going to keep it. And you're not going to keep it, but you're going to grow it. Bruce Lee was right when he said long-term consistency betters short-term intensity. And so what does it do? Consistency establishes our reputation. Anybody can be good once in a while. To be good all the time, I mean, that establishes your reputation. Consistency is a prerequisite to excellence. You know, we're never good the first time, and we're honestly not too hot the second time either. Okay, but if you put enough times in that process, all of a sudden it really begins to. And what a lot of people don't understand is every day they're storing. They have a storage area, and they're storing either a lot of good stuff, or to be honest with you, they could be storing a lot of bad stuff. But what happens is what you store someday shows up. And when it shows up, all of a sudden people begin to think that you're pretty amazing. So that's the advice.